Hey everyone, welcome to Processing Severance, the Aftershow podcast brought to you by the Hollywood Critics Association. Thank you guys for following us. Thank you for subscribing to our channel and being a part of this discussion. I can't believe that we're already on episode 8.
No. I need to be on episode 9.
I mean, this really went by.
I need to be on season 2.
Yes. I'll take that one too.
People have some mixed views about that, by the way. Well, I'm your host, Rasha Goel, and I am joined today by Rick Hong.
As they say, my friends, the hour is yours.
And Jeff Ewing.
Like Irving, I see a red door and I want to paint it black.
Wonderful. Now, before we get started, just a reminder that if you want to submit any questions or just your feedback, you can email us at shows@hollywoodcriticsassociation.com. And then again, we also have the comment section where we do post our videos on our Hollywood Critics Association YouTube, so you can join us there, follow us on Twitter, Instagram. We are everywhere, so make sure you connect with us and check out all our other shows too. Now, before we dive deep into episode 8, I did want to acknowledge an email and a comment. So email shout out to Derek Anderson. So Derek says, great podcast, guys. Thank you for that, Derek. And I really enjoy each podcast breakdown. I would like to comment from what Mike D wrote in, and I believe that's from the last discussion that we had.
Mike D of the Beastie Boys, man. Yes. I love it.
That stayed in my head forever, Rick. Okay. So from what I have gathered, Severance has been original in thought this entire time. Nothing has been pulled from other shows. Homecoming from Amazon Prime is exactly what Mike D is theorizing Severance to be. I'm not sure yet what exactly Lumen's purpose is, but I keep thinking that the baby goats are an experiment to naturally create a living being that is born with a severed mind. That came to my mind too. That's really interesting because, we still really haven't gotten a breakdown of what's happening with these goats. We saw them once, we were introduced to them, but they were not brought back. So that's something that we can talk about later. Also from KM, who commented on our YouTube. Thanks so much for following us. KM says, Helly is definitely a Lumen supporter. Something that we had also talked about on our previous shows. And I know Jeff's really feeling that one. And may even be an Egan herself. I think she joined the program because Severance is getting a lot of bad publicity, and she did it as a sacrifice to prove to the public that it is safe. Now, if an Egan is willing to do it, that's also making a statement to the public. It also explains why Milchick says they are so excited and grateful to Helly for doing this and why she is so determined to stay there. So, great insight there too. I mean, I think we had all discussed that this may be a possibility.
We talked about it in episode Perpetuity when they went there. You know, Jeff, you talked about it, how Helly kind of had this like weird kind of just like long, or like the directing. I think at that point, it was Ben Stiller, I think.
Right.
You know, where there was a kind of like this like long gaze at one of the founders as they were going through.
It was when they were switching speeches to the female CEO from the Egan line, and then they cut immediately to a scene with Helly. And when they did that, it also passed by some imagery where the implication in that moment kind of pointed to Helly having some connection to the Egan family.
You know, I think that would be good for the viewers and for everybody. Maybe they should just go back and watch Perpetuity and then come back and watch our Perpetuity.
Yeah.
And
then watch them all.
I think that's what should happen.
And then watch Severance in Perpetuity, just in a loop, adding seasons as they come.
Because Perpetuity, even in this episode, you know, it's there again. So,
all right. Let's talk about episode 8, because this episode I thought was very thought-provoking. This is the episode where they're going for it, guys. Like, the team has come together. They are ready. The plan is happening. I think their nerves are boiling, but still, like, they're ready to do this. They want to figure this out. Did that stand out? I mean, obviously that stood out to you guys, I'm assuming, but like, what from that theme stood out for you?
I love that they are very much in their Ocean's 11 phase from moment one, you know, where Helly's on the clock trying to get everybody at a point where they can hit. We'll get to it, but they have a very particular goal in mind that Helly has to be done with, and they have to be, meet their quota for. And so everybody's on board. She's racing against the clock. It really starts things off in that their group plan moment.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting because I'm watching because you see her, and I was looking at the clock because obviously she's on some sort of clock. So I was like, dude, is it the end of the day? You know, is it getting towards like 5 o'clock at the end of the day, and that's when you have to hit your goal? But it was like 11:40 in the morning, and so I was like, wow, that's a rant. So I don't know if maybe noon. You know, by noon or what she had is that what she had to hit to get that goal or whatever. But I thought 11:40 was a little random, but agreed. Like, yeah, they're in it. You know, like they've got it. Like that's kind of the start of there's something deeper in this episode of where they're going to team up, and what we want is you know for them to break free.
And what I loved too about the episode was we get a little insight into Irv's outie. Right? We see Irv at his home and the painting. And it was so interesting to see those paintings too, the colors of the black and the gray and the replica of the same painting.
Yep.
And just him and his dog. And I felt like we were really starting to learn a little bit more about who this person is. We didn't get too much into it, but I definitely got that feel of, okay, he's artistic. But there's something dark to that art as well.
You go and then I'll go.
I was gonna say that I watched that scene many times because I've been saying this early on. I was interested in getting more Irving time, getting more information. So I was really fascinated. And love his taste in music. He only paints to the Ace of Spades. And I was like, Irving, my man, dig it. It's a quality track. And then it also kind of makes sense of the oozing blackness that keeps coming because that's
and the thing and why his fingers were dirty.
Yes.
Yep.
So
it's all kind of coming together in this episode, right? We're seeing the correlation slowly starting to develop between the innies and the outies. Rick, you were going to say something.
No, for me, it was interesting how they opened it up. But I was like literally like I think I was just so invested in just like them like wanting them to team up and get to the room and do everything. How Ben opened up and it's on Irv and he's outside.
Yeah,
he's outside with the dog, and we've seen him throughout this season how he's like able to like recite these passages and everything else. So I paused. He's reading Marcus Aurelius's The Emperor's Handbook. I have no idea what that book is about, but it explains like the type of guy like you were saying artistic explains the type of guy that he is and like why like passages and everything else like the art within Lumen and there's like doing the like reading the passages and everything. It gives us a better idea right for now a little bit more but we still don't know Irv yet.
But it seems like too based on that I kept thinking he is a deep thinker like now we're seeing the passages that he reads and the art he creates, and again just going back to what you were saying, just noticing him at Lumen when he observes things like he really deeply observes them. He doesn't just take a look, but you see he really gets captured into what he's looking at. There's some deep thought process happening.
It's like a person when they go to a gallery or a museum that sits there and like looks
analyzes.
Like me, I'm just kind of like, all right, cool. I look at the placard and then I kind of keep going. I'm like, I'm looking for like the one thing that I really, really want to see. But yeah, but you said the deep thinker that just sits there and like really just looks at.
Right. Well, the thing that's interesting too is because Marcus Aurelius was, a Roman emperor that wrote all these notes to himself. That's what the meditations are, right? It was him journaling to himself about Stoicism, right? The philosophy that focuses on, how to live in the world where you don't really have any control over your circumstances, right? So their whole philosophy is basically, it's way more complex than this. I know I'm simplifying, but in essence, it's saying that like, okay, well, you either have control over your circumstances or you don't. And if you do, then you don't need to worry about it because you can just change it. And if you don't, worrying doesn't help you. So it focuses on you trying to look at your life rationally, change what you can, and be realistic about the rest. So it's interesting for his character, I think.
He's okay. So remember how like the Audi Marquez is like in that weird neighborhood. This time around, it shows like Leonora Lake, and that's where Irv is. But he's kind of like in another type of weird setup. Like these look like apartment buildings or something. And then he goes inside, and his kitchen looks kind of similar to. Probably because it's the same production.
I thought it was some type of a home, to be honest with you. I was trying to figure it out.
But that's what I'm saying though. It's kind of like, is that another Lumen housing that Irv stays at, like we suspect Mark S does?
Yeah.
So, but
Very possible.
but in a whole different. And at this stage, we have no idea who Irv's neighbors are.
No, we don't. Or if he gets checkups, although I feel like Mark gets highly specialized treatment in that regard. Very off the books.
Okay, let's talk about checkups and wellness checks. Mark gets sent in for a wellness check by Miss Cobel, as usual.
Why do you care what happens to me?
Because we're people, not parts of people. Even with what little they gave us, these are our lives. No one gets to just turn you off.
You're nice, Mark.
This time we see Miss Casey and him having this conversation about her getting fired. And it's so interesting because you see this concern from him. He's constantly he's very concerned. He's not even listening to what she's saying. And then she's telling him about what his what his Audi is like. So very interesting. And then, of course, we find out that Miss Casey's now being fired. There's a new wellness coach coming in, a new wellness director coming in. And so and then she gets taken to another testing, which again, she's like, I don't know. I just feel like she's a rat as part of an experiment. We had seen this reference at another show too, where Miss Cobel just is using her as an experiment, I feel.
Well, there's a lot of revealing things in their conversation, like she says, the 8 hours that I was awake, watching, hanging out with you guys or over looking over at Helly art. She's like, I know I'm strange, but she was like saying, but it's the most enjoyment I've had. So it's just like, dude, that's sad.
Yeah.
But I was just going to add, there is something going on because we know after that, and feel free to add too, Jeff, but I feel that you see Milchick and Miss Cobel talking, right? And he talks about, the chip is working, and yet she still sends her down for testing.
Yeah.
So that's just to add to what you're saying, is that there's something happening there within that system. Maybe hers is different in the process of being severed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's the opposite of what we normally see, where we see if they're going down a dark room, everything lights up, or they're in a lit room. Whereas for her,
Pure darkness.
yeah, it's dark. And, and then you see granted, this also, Jeff, you go, because I think you're going to expand on what I'm talking about, but just the darkness.
Yeah, what's interesting is that I noticed that there's one real quick frame in the Irving paintings, because first, what the hell is he doing? And he's painting a long, dark hallway that ends in a dark elevator with an upside down red light
Going down.
And it's the testing center that he's painting obsessively.
Yes.
So then that means that possibly, that we don't know, but then has Irv gone down there as well? Because if he's able to keep painting this thing, and I just want to give a shout out to Ben Stiller too, because the one point when he's painting, the cool thing is they reverse the shot. And so you see the little square get smaller and smaller with the paint.
Yes.
I thought that was really cool.
That was really neat. Well, and that's the thing too then, because then you find, I'm just questioning too, are there moments where he is out of that Audi any movement? Is it where maybe, when a drug wears off, is there something happening with the chip too that's kind of messing him up in this sense?
Yeah, I feel like it, because clearly his any experience is bleeding into his Audi, at least subconscious, that he's obsessively painting this testing area.
But then his Audi is also
obsessing
into his innie with the ooze.
With those,
Absolutely. And so there's some, that the dividing line between the two is permeable for Irv. And I don't know if it's the product of the testing or that's why they're testing him, but maybe part of it has to do with, because, I've been talking... I've been kind of loosely theorizing that emotion and some of these non-rational parts of the self are maybe part of the reason why these innies and outies are converging for some characters. But I also think maybe because he's so creative, creativity is also not a rational part of the brain. It doesn't come from a rational place. So maybe they can't totally sever that.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That's interesting. Speaking of Miss Cobel, she gets fired in this episode. Whoa. Didn't see that coming. And in that scene, too, with Natalie, we actually hear a voice
Out of the speaker box.
From the speaker box. Like,
Yes.
whoa, who is this? But I loved the way Patricia Arquette just plays that. Like, you feel her intensity of frustration. She is about to kill somebody. And then just her interaction with, I love how Milchick's got her box. And he's just like, it's been a pleasure, like he's just ready to get rid of her at the end. Everything's in her box. Yeah. But this is a pivotal turning point, I think, in this episode that's setting us up for season 2. Because now we're going to see the trajectory in her life and what this does to her. Because I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it correlates. It goes into the scene of where we see her going home and acting very rash and just destroying things that are related to Lumen Industries.
Yeah, and her drive home was awesome. That was such a good performance.
Shot so well.
She was swearing like Samuel L. Jackson and a sailor merged, and I was very impressed.
I think someone said that Jonah Hill actually tops Samuel L. Jackson in F words, like in a movie or something like that. But she, in like that scene, she's got some good colorful language. What I also liked about the firing is just the fact that like the board is also saying, and you've gone more rogue by visiting Mark's sister. They knew about, her being next door and everything else too,
Sure,
but
right.
we never really sure like how much the board and everything else about her going even farther by being the nanny. Yep. And even for them, they're like, that's crossing a line. It's not so much that not letting them know about the Helly attempt suicide, but the fact that dude, you're also doing this. And that's not part of your job or a protocol or what we're trying to do here at Lumen.
Because originally I thought that maybe they were kind of intersected. So I think it was neat for me to see that at this point that, oh, whoa, they're not. That's her just taking her own agenda. Because at one point I thought maybe it is, even though we had seen with, was it Grainer? No, what was his
name?
Grainer. Remember, he was even surprised when she was in that nursing outfit. He's like, where are you going?
Yeah.
What are you doing? But yeah, just to add to what you were saying.
No, totally. Because the thing is, everybody, even among the antagonists, are all running their own little games. You have like Milchick that's running his little art intervention with Irving, always an art connection. Then you have her doing things that he's surprised by and the board doesn't know about. And getting infested with the sister was the most shocking to me because that's extremely invasive. Like holding the baby when, let's be honest, chamomile tea or no, she should not be anywhere near a human child.
She should not be near humans. That worries me with her cult involvement.
Mark.
What were some other things that stood out to you both in this episode that you think are going to kind of set precedent for season 2 for us?
Well, you were talking about the directing, with like Stiller directing, but like how about them? How about Mark and Helly? We're seeing that connection more between, and then the mood lighting. Mood lighting as they're giving the egg party.
Yeah.
Wasn't it the waffle party?
Well, no. Dylan gets waffle party late, but they're giving egg for hitting the
egg bar social.
Egg bar social, exactly. Yes. But like in
covered
that, we saw like
the lighting was wonderful. It kind of that scene is so set apart from the rest of the scenes, and I feel like it's a very important scene actually.
And the interruption. You see like the mood lighting, and then the interruption as Milchick obviously like off screen gets the news about Harmony being fired, so he clicks the light on. And it's almost kind of like if you're like if you're a youth or whatever, it's like you're with the person on a date, and it's like maybe the TV's on but the lights are off, maybe you get a little closer and this and that, and all of a sudden the adult comes in and turns the light on. Like I always said, these guys, they're children. The waffle party, the egg bar social, they're children. They don't even get alcohol.
They're always monitored.
It's true. Well, hey, look, we finally see what happens if you leave them to their own devices. They're biting. They're having little schmooziness. In all seriousness, I love how they filmed that scene because, when you have you establish the egg bar social, and then you have Mark sit down with Helly, and they kind of start to flirt a little obviously, and at first it's just cleverly shot with them through that it was a mirror, right?
Yes.
Off to the side. I really love the shot choice in that. It's very clever. And then, you know, you have like the kind of romantic pink lighting for a minute until it's interrupted. It was really it was lovely. It was really smart way to film that initial, like, breaking the professional barriers, I guess you could say.
No, and we're at a 180 because, you know, for the first couple episodes, she's like, I loathe you.
Right.
You know, I hate you. I don't like you. And now it's
a romantic interest, possibly. She kisses him.
Yep.
So.
And that I wasn't expecting to see. I mean, like, that's very much like in a movie, you know, it's just like, it's like for good luck, you know, let me just give you a kiss for good luck or whatever. So like I was like, oh, okay. I was like, you're throwing some like movie stuff in this awesome TV
But I was
series.
like, what's going to happen to the innies? I mean, the outies, like once they figure this out, you know, what is going to happen in that other world for them?
Once the innies figure this out.
Yes.
I love it. Well, because they're about to put their, as they know it, their lives in Dylan's hands. You know,
they've left it to him to be the okay, you're the guy that's going to handle everything here, and then we're going to go out and you're the or I mean, he's willing to sacrifice himself. He's kind of the guy.
He's
like,
risking a lot, you know. But he has a lot of confidence in himself to do it. So we'll see if.
But the truth is, the way I look at, but like if there's one thing that we know about Dylan, he's not really like a sacrifice type guy. He's actually very selfish because he wants them waffles.
But
he wants them waffles.
But that's why it's so interesting to see, right? I mean, even they have that whole discussion with them, and he still at that was like, no, I'm going to do it. I mean, Helly and him even talk about it. It's like, if it's going to be anyone, it should be me. And so it just, you do wonder, like, why is he willing to sacrifice at this point?
Yeah, but he also looks at himself like, I can put all the pieces together faster with like all the different instructions and stuff.
He's a game person.
Let me do this, you know, so that you guys can go do it. You know, and the truth is, it's like, he probably doesn't really like care about that brat kid of his. He's like, dude, no. He's like,
no.
He wanted
waffle party forever.
He wanted the waffle party. He wants to believe that he's this bachelor, even if he says he's over Miss Casey and still just wants to be friends with her, you know? So like, he wants to like hold on to that. I'm still a bachelor type dude and get all these ladies versus, oh no, I'm in an unhappy marriage with a wife.
I have domestic responsibilities. Why?
Jeff, what other scenes stood out to you in this episode?
The waffle party. That's I've been saying the entire time it's a cult, and it turns out it's a way kinkier and creepier cult than even I thought. And you know what? I love surprises.
Well, the masks are like, it was interesting because, you know, we had this, like, Rasha and I had this conversation a little bit, but like the masks, I think, are very relative towards that first painting that Irv and Burt are talking about with all the people in it. And like, I think that's what the masks are for each of those, but I don't know how the connection is made.
I was just trying to figure out like who the characters
in the actual waffle party aspect of it.
It's got kind of like a little erotic sense to it too, in a way.
Eyes wide shut.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, but I will say, like, from the dance point, like, I enjoyed the choreography, looking at it from an artistic point of view. Like, again, the way that scene is shot and the way it's lit. And then you have these four moving pieces and how everything is so perfectly choreographed where you're trying to figure out what are each of these characters representing. Also, the use of color for each of those characters, too. I mean, I think even while I'm talking to you right now, like, what's standing out for me is when they're all done and the four of them come into this final position and they're posed. And I guess that's the dancer in me. But I just kept staring at that. I'm like, oh my God, what does this mean?
Well, and we're not sure, too, that was the final position because they stopped when they noticed that Dylan went rogue.
Yeah.
I love it. He's like taking off.
Yeah, he said later, like just sitting there with the waffles. And I thought it was interesting, too. So you have the four heads that they have. First, you put on an Egan head. And then they also showed, to kind of reinforce the weird kinkiness of it all, they had like a quick scene of like that cat o' nine tails with like virtues written on the ends of it, you know, which super creepy. And so he's sitting there with that big old Egan head. I presume it's an Egan head. Why wouldn't it be an Egan head? And then they have a jester mask, a sort of surprised looking bride mask, an old woman mask, and there's a fourth one. a ram.
Yes.
And the ram is a guy. And it's interesting because rams are often associated with occult imagery. And then both the...
and it's a skull too, right?
I think it's just a ram.
Was it a ram? I felt like it had a skull feel to it.
The problem is that all those masks are creepy. So it's
Yeah.
really
They
hard to
were
actually
creepy.
just
They were
to pull it
definitely
out
creepy.
and say, like you were saying, like you were kind of like,
Nothing
I
was
think
pleasant.
that it was an Egan because like clearly like the
Yeah, we don't have real context other than it's nightmare fuel. So...
As the story develops too, we see Mark then visiting now Mrs. Selvig.
Which is funny because that's when she's like having her meltdown and she's crying and everything. And I was like, knock, knock. And she's like, eh?
As Miss Cobel.
She just like that scene where she's like, eh? It just totally changes the tone of the scene. And you start bust out laughing. Of just, but you have to ask her. Yeah, it's just like one of those things. It's like, wow, that's a good choice.
It's hilarious. But I love her choice too there, and where she's like, at first she's like, no, I'm not going to go. And then all of a sudden you see her deciding to go. And she's like, I can take my own car. And if I want to scream or whatever. I forgot the comment she made. But again.
If she gets scared, she mentioned that?
Yes, or something. But again, it had like this slight comedic touch to it, right?
Yep.
It's like the seriousness of it is covered by the slight, but she does it so well. So they end up going to the party. Brother-in-law is just so wacky to me.
Ricken,
with him and Mark. I'm just like, does he even know what he's saying half the times? But again, it's got that, they've got that relationship.
It's bull and lies.
Yes. I think the most important thing in this scene is the conversation between Mark and Mrs. Selvig, and how she is delighted to hear when Mark says, I might be quitting Lumen. Mm-hmm. Such a pivotal turning point when that happened. Mm-hmm. What do you think is running through her mind at that point?
It's at that point, for me, when I was watching, it's one of two things, it's very much just like it's just like the one thing of like, dude, they just screwed me over. So good for you. Yep. Good for you. So like that's the way that I look at like her kind of just taking that in.
Yeah, and I also think it's interesting because I still don't know why Mark is so important to them, but I really still feel that he is, because he's put next to the boss. She personally checks in on him regularly, and everybody else might be getting check-ins too, but I feel like it's because she's so pivotal to the story so far. Her being connected to him in that way and observing him so personally means he's probably important for some reason.
And it's she's integrated, right? Professionally and personally with him.
Exactly. And also it's his spouse that is taken for whatever reasons and made a very special type of any, like an any only any maybe. Like it's thawed out every now and then. But it's so I think that whatever his importance for Lumen is, she hates them now, and she's really, really excited to see whatever their plans are be ruined.
Yep. And especially having Mark on her side, I mean, that's like a trump card for her, right? So she kind of gets to use him in a way that we don't. I mean, of course, I think she's very manipulative. Oh, yeah. And she's just about herself.
Exactly. She's always right.
It's about her at the end of the day.
There's no generosity.
No, she doesn't really
from
care about
Cobel
people.
or Mrs.
Nobody
Selvig.
exists except for as they're useful to her or not.
Yes, exactly. Everyone's a pawn piece for her. And I think the biggest turning point in this episode, too, is, of course, we see Dylan and the switches, being pushed. And you're just like, whoa, it's happening. And I can't wait to watch episode 9.
Well, there's some cool things in that, because as he's looking at the board and going through all the stuff, and, like, one of the things, and I guess, who knows what these other things mean. Because, like, we found about the overtime contingency, and that's what he's looking for, is he's switching down. But I paused, and I looked at the other stuff, and we've got beehive, goldfish, lullaby, and open house. And I'm like, what the hell are those things? Like because we saw in that control room that there's other people besides
names,
just,
right?
we saw that aspect of it. But now it's like, so then we were told about this overtime contingency. But now I see all these other stuff and I'm like, wait, what are all those other things? Like what can those buttons do? If you get it to that level. So
here's a hint, folks at home: bad things, very, very bad things. You don't want them to do whatever those things do.
No, but again, looking at the way that scene was shot too, I loved how the adrenaline is built up, right? There's these tight shots that are done on these different key points that are building up to what Dylan is about to do. And I love the cinematography of it all. Like, I just love how that entire scene is a build up and then it leaves you hanging.
And he's reaching and he's reaching. And you think, is he going to be able to reach that second lever? And I think yes, because he's awesome. So he's going to do it. Otherwise, it'd be very uneventful. But
yeah, I know, right? You build it up and like, you build it up and then we get into episode 9.
He's
like, I get
the season finale, and it's like they're all just.
The camera pulls back and he's literally like a foot and a half from it, nowhere even close.
Or he's fallen on the floor or something. I think that for this particular episode, like I said, there were a lot of different things that happened. It was very thought-provoking, made me really think even more about each character and where they came from and where they were going. And as I get close to wrapping this up with you guys, is there anything that maybe I missed, or again, as we go into episode 9 that stood out to both of you?
I mean, there's two things where it's just like with Irv to kind of like finish him out for this episode, because we kind of did like the whole like kiss between Helly and Mark, and then Dylan's right, he's off to the waffle party into the control room. And then but with Irv, like the kind of like one of the last things we see with him is again he's reading that creed or whatever, but then he's got the hard-boiled egg, and then he just it's just like it's like his own version of like, to you guys, whatever. I'm done. Like, I'm ready.
He's done with this place.
Yeah, I'm ready. It's like Dylan's on his mission. Irv is like, I'm making my stand now. Helly and Mark got their connection or whatever.
I'm out of here.
And then one more interesting thing is just when, Dylan's turned the switches, we get little flashes, not of Mark, because we know where he and Dylan are and what they've been doing, but it has a really quick flash of Irv, and he's just doing his thing when he's doing the beginning of the episode. And then Helly's interesting to me, though, because in the brief snippet we get of her outie life, she's at a party toasting with a fancy champagne flute. And probably, my guess is because she's totally connected to the Egans and is doing some fancy outie privileged thing, and they are going to have a really, really bad party.
And wasn't that the party that Miss Cobel was supposed to go to? Because
they were getting ready as we saw Mark leaving. We saw them laying down the carpet for the gala,
and that was the gala that she was supposed to be at, Miss Cobel. But that's another thing. She was pissed that she wasn't going to be able to go to that and discuss it there.
They were building that up.
Listen, we are so excited because we are going to be doing a special bonus episode. So make sure that you check that episode out, because we are going to have an interview with Patricia Arquette. This is a big deal that she's coming on. So we're so excited. Also in that show, we are going to be previewing the season finale. Plus, we're going to rank the top 9 burning questions that you all have and we have about this show, processing Severance. So thank you again for joining us on the Aftershow podcast, brought to you by the Hollywood Critics Association. And again, keep your comments coming on our YouTube page. Also, you can still email us at shows@hollywoodcriticsassociation.com. Make sure you put processing Severance in the subject so we know that it's for our show, because we have multiple shows. So once again, thank you for joining us. We've got one more episode left, so make sure you come back with our special bonus episode. We want to have all of you there. Have a great week.